Welcome to our webinar tonight. We are going to be talking about how to prepare for a new listing. And I've got Shannon who's co-hosting right now. So if you do have comments or you need to speak up, or if I'm going too fast, because I've done this for a long time, just send a little message or a chat into the chat box and I'll have Shannon interrupt the call and go ahead and unmute or handle that part of the webinar. So tonight is all about learning and growing on how to best prepare for a new listing. We are going back to the basics and I'm going to share with you what I would do if I was taking a listing and it's October 5th and we're still dealing with COVID and we're still dealing with challenges with meeting with sellers. And I want you to be totally prepared for this new listing. So we're going to jump in with some of the tips and tricks and actually roll up our sleeves and actually work through some examples tonight with you. So Shannon is going to be my client, and I'm actually going to walk through with you how to do a new listing. So we're going to talk about the trio. Oops. For some of you about the trio or the CMA, like when do I do what? How do I do it? Especially with everything going on. I'm going to go through the trio, how to kind of prepare the CMA, talk about disclosures, MLS form. We actually are going to fill out the 1A on transaction desk, and then maybe a shortcut to help you with inputting on the MLS. So tonight is a full 30 minutes. And then if you have questions, just send them through the chat or just send me a note after, and I'll be happy to answer your specific question that way. So let's jump right in. And I know Shannon and I might have to just admit people as we're going through, because I am going to share my screen on many of these things. So the first thing I want to do is, and this is the number one thing you need to do. If you're new to the business, I don't care if you've been doing this a long time, it's the number one thing that you have to do. It's a must do. Otherwise, you risk the chance of not having a valid listing agreement. You must contact a title company and order up a trio. And some of you are like, I don't even know what a trio is. You know, what is a trio? So I went ahead and did a sample so you guys could see what this is all about tonight. So I have a listing appointment we're going to mock up tonight. But before I even meet with the seller to determine price or put a contract in front of them, the number one thing I'm going to go ahead and do is order it up from a title company. Now there are many, I have 15 really good friends at various title companies. So it's super important that I find a title company that can deliver it very, very quickly. And I just happen to have Tycor come in the office. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not, picking on anybody here. I have a lot of friends from Chicago and Fidelity and from all of the various title and escrow companies, but you have to find a title company that you can trust to give you the information that you need for that listing appointment or to take that listing. So if you're asking yourself tonight, Rochelle, I already took the listing, I didn't get the trio, you could always get it after the fact, but it is a must because there are gaps or there are issues if you fail to get your title report in time. So go ahead and you're going to see in your email box, this is what they typically give you is an order confirmation. There's an order number. For some of you that have been doing this a long time, one of the top producer tip is to include that order number in your listing remarks, in the agent only remarks, because that order number that you ordered preliminary on, that is easy for a title company to match up in their system. So it kind of helps keep everything organized so that when you write an offer and you have to place the title company in that offer, you could put, please use Tycor title, in my case here with this example, order number 7015248. And therefore that would all be matched up. So there's no discrepancies or, I lost that paper or I lost that. You have a very, very systematic process from start to finish when you work with that title company. So that order number gets attached through the entire length of the transaction once you have a buyer for that particular listing. So scroll down to the attachments, Shannon. And as you can see, what they've sent me is a little more than a trio because in their system, I've asked for a plat map. this is the plat map right there, which shows you the exact dimensions of the plat or the lot. In this case, it was a new construction and it's 138.18 by 90.01. So I have a good understanding that this is truly the plat map or the property that I'm looking at. Now, if you have a different type of property that may not have a plat map associated with it, like if you're dealing with a condo, obviously they're not going to give you a plat map, but that's not part of the trio. Trio meaning three things. Plat map is something extra that I always have my title officer or my escrow company give me when I'm preparing. So that's something you can just throw in as like a tool, if you've been doing this a long time. But the trio really encompasses three items, which if you can go to the next attachment, Shannon, there are three very important things. This is the property profile. So if you're asking me as your broker to assist you with helping you find comparables, which some of you have taken me up on, and I have helped you with your CMAs, I need to see a property profile so that I know what I'm dealing with, because I have not toured the property or I have not gone on the appointment with you. And so I need the property profile, which has all of the pertinent information that's recorded on the title. So the tax year tells me how much the taxes are. It tells me what land use. All of these things are very important in putting together a proper CMA. So it is a preliminary information. It is part of the trio. It is one of the three items for the trio that a title company would provide, the property profile. That's number one. Number two, go to the next attachment.
Well, I think it's also important. It tells you the tax for the current year. So when you're inputting it later, I've seen on some listings, even recently, that they'll show the tax amount for last year, and we're almost through 2020.
Yeah, so that really should be updated, and they're just not doing a good job for their seller and honestly just gathering the information at the time. So maybe they received it a while ago and then they just have not updated. So if you're taking a listing, you can always call the title company and say, hey, can you give me a revised property profile or to confirm that the taxes are correct? That is their responsibility to make sure that they are collecting the proper taxes and giving that to the Washington state or their property, the county in question. They're responsible for that. So they have that duty and they have provided that attachment in their trio. The next one, Shannon. This is the actual legal description. So now I don't want you guys typing up the legal description when you are actually building your 1A or building your listing agreement. So the proper thing to do is to have the Exhibit A or the legal description with you when you go on that appointment. Because I know for a fact, if you go on an appointment, especially if you've been trained by Best Choice Realty, you're going to have your 1A all filled out, and that might be great. But if you do not have a legal description that is the proper legal description attached, and I like to have them initial it too, that could potentially not be a valid listing contract if you do not have the legal description. And what if you have a legal description you pulled off the property, say you went to the tax records? That's not always accurate. In fact, the accuracy on the tax records is about 69%. So I would not advise you to just go down and pull it off Realist or pull the legal description off the property. You want to pull the legal description from the trio, from what the title company supplies you. That's why it's important to have this, because you have a valid listing agreement and you have a title company who has went ahead and approved this for you. Let's go to the next one. So that's number two. The third one is the statutory warranty deed. This is important because you want to, when you are filling out your listing agreement, you want to make sure that the name that you put on the listing contract is the last vesting deed. That is the vesting deed that was done with the title company when they purchased or when they refinanced it, or when they did a quick claim and took the husband or the wife off of it, or when they turn it into a living trust. That type of thing gets recorded. And so when you ask for the trio from the title company, what you will receive is this, what you see on the screen. It will show you, and this is a mouthful, you guys. I would probably mistake, she goes by PUA, P-U-A, but I would probably, if I didn't order my trio, I would know that her legal name that goes on the contract needs to be Puani Tagoya. And I'm sorry, I'm butchering her name, but And then I know that her husband also needs to be in the appointment. By the last vesting deed here, it shows his name as well as her name, even though she's the one that's been talking with me by phone and by email. So this is super important that you know what the vesting is and who the people are. It says grantee and then grantor. So they bought it from Richmond American. And then that makes sense because they told me they bought it as brand new and they are considering selling it. And now I know I need to meet with both clients, both Pua, the wife, and Lua, the husband. And I need to know how they want to take their title and how they want to go forward with that. So again, those are the three things of the trio. Super important. In fact, you really shouldn't be filling out a 1A unless you have these three things. Does it cost you anything? No. In fact, it's free to a real estate agent who is doing business. We have a relationship with many of the title companies. If you're working on the peninsula or down south in Vancouver, they may be different companies because of where they're located and where they handle the title recording. So if you see Ticor, you're like, I know Ticor, for example, does not record down in Lewis County, but they have a relationship with Chicago. So you could probably get a trio from any of the companies. They just might be giving you a different order number if you are going to be utilizing somebody maybe out like land title or some of these outlying areas. They may have a different process or a different order number, but any of the title companies in Washington can provide you a trio. It would be hard pressed to find a title company that was not able to provide that to you for free. Okay, so you have that. Let's go to the next option, which is the next thing you need to prepare for your appointment. So if I'm going on an appointment and I am going to be meeting with the seller, just like when I represent a buyer, I need to make sure that I have given them the proper disclosures. And in COVID, after COVID kind of days is what I'm calling this, you have two options. You either can hand deliver, which some of you are going with precaution, wearing the mask. I showed up with my appointment with Pua with the mask, and I brought with me a listing box that had all the disclosures and had copies of everything that I'm required to give them. And that is perfectly fine. You can continue to do that if that is your operating business practice. There's nothing wrong with delivering that, especially if they've invited you into their home and you have taken precautions and you are meeting them where they're at in the COVID process. Then what you'll want to do is give them a listing box. So we have them all pre-assembled, ready to go. It'd just be a cost. If we can send this ahead of your appointment, if you'd like, you would just call or contact any of the real estate offices that we operate out of, Linwood, Tukwila, Sumner, or Tacoma, and put in a request. If as long as you give us advance notice, we can mail it ahead of your appointment. If you're trying to go on the appointment same day, you're going to be on your own on that one, and you'll probably need to just do it electronically. But this is basically what you would get. You would get a box with a beautiful teal ribbon, along with a presentation that you could leave at their house, along with some supplements that are helpful, and then also a keychain, a flag, and all of the home warranty, the mold and moisture, all of the disclosures that we receipt when we start working with them. All of those disclosures are given at that first appointment. You could see in the bottom, the second box over to the right, you can see the law of agency pamphlet, the mold and moisture, the lead-based paint. All of those disclosures are in that package. And we ordered them from the MLS, and we're basically selling that package to you at cost for the box and assemble everything together. So all of that is available at one of the offices, or you can just send them an email. So Shannon, let's pretend I'm emailing you today, and we're going to create an email, and you would just say, just send it to me. And you would just say, again, you could send it to an email to support@bestchoicerealtywa.com and say, I would like a pre-listing box available. So that's what you could do right there. Pre-listing box. Yeah, you can call it that. If you go and pick it up from one of our offices, one of the offices can help you and print out, say, your 1A all filled out for you. So you have that available. Or you can have it shipped. Can I come pick up a listing box tomorrow morning? And then you would basically have a confirmation from our office. That support at bestchoicerealtywa.com is an email box that I check frequently. Every day it's monitored. And so if you do send a request, you can expect a same day response on that. And then we can get you handled so that you're prepared for your appointment. We love those boxes because they have everything in it that you would need to look very professional to your clients. The other option would be to email your client the disclosures. And this is a very important thing you do, because whether you're working with a buyer or a seller, you are required to give them a copy of the disclosures. So you can do it by email. And if you go to Transaction Desk, you can do it from Transaction Desk or just in your email box. I have a folder on my desktop that has all of the disclosures, P1, P2, P3, P4, all of those disclosures. That would be the law of agency, that would be the mold and moisture, all of that information would be available. And then I would just say disclosures in the subject line. Perfect. And then I would just put, hi Pua, I'm talking with her. Her husband does not have an email address. Otherwise, I'd address both of them. Attached are the disclosures I'm required to send you by law. And then I would attach all of the disclosures. Now you can do this in Transaction Desk. Many of you have set up, your quick select, and that's an advanced tactic. You can do that in Transaction Desk. That saves you some time. For me, I'm a little old school in that I have them attached to my desktop and I just pop them into this email and I send it off to Pua. And it was great to meet with you, or I'm looking forward to meeting with you tonight, or to, sending you the listing agreement for you to review separately. Whatever it may be, you do need to have proof that you've delivered those disclosures. Proof can be just logging that you had an appointment with them, that you did a listing appointment and you gave them the box. That satisfies the state's requirement as well. Okay, the next item to do would be, okay, now I've done my trio, I've ordered it with my title company. I went ahead and prepared my disclosures or had them available or sent them to my seller to review. I like to do it at the beginning, and I don't like to do it at the end. It's just easier for me to just get in the habit of doing that right away. Then I want to go to Transaction Desk and I want to build a listing. But before I do that, one of the key things that many of you fail to do, and you go out there and get ahead of yourself, is you fail to look and see if the address that you were given is on the market currently, or what's the status? Because sometimes people get confused. It's just the way sellers are. I think we used to say buyers are liars. I would say sellers can also be liars in the sense they just don't understand, and they need somebody, a consultant, to help them. And it has happened to me, so I know it's probably happened to some of you. You want to go to the MLS and you want to look up their address and just make sure that they're not currently listed, not pending, not in a status. Heck, you might want to just check and see what the other agent listed their home or when they bought it. But just do a double check. I always put that in my checklist of things I need to do before I go out on that appointment, is just make sure it's not currently on the market. And we just look it up from address. You go to search and then you look for address 2680. And then, yeah, pop that in, Shannon. Let's just see. I don't even know. This would be interesting to see if, and there it is. So they did sell. So now I have information about when they bought it. What were the marketing remarks? Who was the owners? What were the showing instructions? What were the directions? You might want to download this and have this available in your package, so that if your client asks you, or they say, how much, I didn't have to pay my buyer's agent any commission. You can clearly show them, well, when you bought it, your agent made 3%. So when they're trying to determine commission, or when they're trying to determine price, or they're trying to figure out what was said about their property in order to get them to purchase, you have all of that intel. It's super important that you maybe look this up, just because I don't want to step on any toes either. I don't want to go out on a listing appointment when the listing's already pending and then get cited a fine that could be thousands of dollars to deal with, and a lot of time and energy on my part or your part to get you out of trouble. So just verify that your listing is not currently pending, active. If it's expired, there is nothing wrong with you taking an expired listing, but just make sure that it actually is expired, that there is not a relist, like they use a different MLS number. Just do another check. It should come up if you search by the address. So that's an important point to take away tonight. The next thing to do would be to go ahead and you can create from Transaction Desk, You can go in and you can do it right from here, or you can go to transaction desk. There was a link on that picture. You could go right from there. It's just going to carry over all of the address and the old information, which may not be accurate. And let's go ahead and put it in listing. PUA, I like to list, PUA listing, perfect. Shannon has worked with me long enough to know that's how I like it. And then we go residential listing and we select the source. And with listings, it's different than when you're working with the buyer, because with Matrix, it's carrying on all of those documents that are associated with Matrix, or from like the supplements the agent put in. Since we're starting new, we don't have an MLS number. We could use the old one, but then that will really screw up kind of how the process works. So you want to use Realist, click that, select the county, it's Pierce. Perfect. What your various county would go in there, and then you need to grab the tax ID. So since we already looked it up, we can go back to Matrix, Shannon, and just grab the tax ID right there, copy it. Perfect. And then pop it right into that. And then we can click create. So that's in essence how you use Transaction Desk to upload and get your listing started. I could build my paperwork through here. I could send them disclosures through this portal. So one way or the other, you can use transaction in this way. So it's going to take a minute to collect the information from the tax records, and then it's ready to go. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into we can go to next, click next, Shannon. And we could add the listing date. Now the listing date's going to go into the paperwork. For the interest of time, you can go through the steps and kind of fill this all in, but I'm going to go right on into the forms, because that's where I need to get to, which is step 3, because I can fill out the forms and it's easier just to do it right from Transaction Desk, because I already have them loaded for you guys. So it makes it really easy to go through and go, oh shoot, I don't remember which forms I need. They're all right here on Transaction Desk, loaded for you based on this is a residential listing. If you're doing a vacant land listing, a different set of documents. If you're doing a commercial listing, a different set of documents. But all of the documents will have, in essence, the basics that you're going to need to fill out. So Shannon's going into the 1 right now, which is the 1A. Notice that it pulled from the tax records their name. So I don't have to sit there and figure out, let's make sure it's correct. As long as the last vesting deed matches the 1A, I'm good to go on my LUA, and I could just verify that it is correct. If they have a middle initial, go ahead and put the middle initial in. So if you want to check it, Shannon, I don't think there was a middle initial. Can you do it real quick and just check to see on the last vesting deed if there was a middle initial? I don't believe so, but this is where you would find it. Okay, no middle initial. I guess because they have a uncommon name. But if you were dealing with like a Randy Smith, you may have to put an initial in here based on the last vesting deed. And that just helps the process go so much more smooth. And then it doesn't have, you don't have problems with, is it the right Randy Smith? And we have a challenge to who is really signing the document. We have had challenges with this in the last 6 months, you guys, where people are trying to pull a fast one, sell a property without getting the husband or the wife. You name it, I've probably experienced it in the last 6 months when it comes to the listing. So we do need to verify that the last vesting deed is the same name that we have here that pulled from the title from Transaction Desk. And then on the listing term, you need to think about your term, and that's a strategy. Now, sometimes most sellers actually, they're going to go with what you tell them. So you fill it in, and then you have less challenge where somebody says, hey, I don't want to take that long to sell my house. You could, on the spot, if you were meeting with the seller, you could cross it off and have them initial if you change it or you manipulate that. Always fill it in though. Every spot here on this listing agreement needs to be filled in order to have a valid listing. So go ahead and put in, I'm going to say for me, I need at least 3 months, because that takes time for marketing. I don't know what's going to happen over the holidays. And so I'm going to go 3 months. You make that business decision. I would say, generally speaking, on the listing agreements that I review, residential properties, anywhere from 3 to 6 month terms. Vacant land, I would say at least 6 to 9 months, maybe a year. And commercial, they're usually a year listings. So again, if that helps you kind of point you in the right direction on what to fill in, hopefully that you can take some notes tonight and you can write that down. Now, on an agency where you have dual agency, let's say Shannon and I are going to co-list, maybe a husband and wife, maybe you guys decide to partner with another agent at best choice. You can do that simply on the contract by putting a hash and then putting my name, go ahead and put my name on there. And that is totally legal. You can do that. I have authorized all of my brokers that work at Best Choice Realty to work cooperatively. And so if there are two names here, I would expect to get some sort of internal split or a referral agreement or something that helps us understand who's getting paid what. Because in essence, this listing agreement is with the firm. I am the one that has to deal with any complaints, withdrawals. I changed my mind, I don't want to sell anymore. I have to be the one that says, okay, I will sign off, because that listing agreement is with the firm. And that's Washington state law. No, it's not based on each brokerage has a different set of operating instructions. It's based on Washington state law. So that listing agreement is with me, and I, as the broker and the seller, have appointed Shannon Hall and say Sherry LaFall to represent the seller in this situation. And then we'd want to put the list date in there. So, and it does say that we've given them the law of agency. Do you see that in line 17? It says
Right.
we've already given them, seller acknowledges receipt of the pamphlet, the law of real estate agency. So if you have not given the seller the disclosures or sent that email or given them the box that has the disclosures inside it, then in essence, you are violating that clause or that section of the seller disclosure provision that's in the form 1A on line 17. Okay, so you got to make sure you're doing that. Otherwise, you run the risk that an attorney will get their hands on the situation and say, hey, you did not earn your commission. And I never want to have to deal with that. I've dealt with that on multiple occasions. And I like to have your files buttoned up as much as possible. And that's why we are taking the time to teach you guys how to do this right. Number 3, on the listing date, you always have to put a listing date. I get asked this almost weekly. It's probably the second most question I get. Uh-oh, Rochelle, what if the seller changed their mind? What if they need more time? What if they, they have to put carpet in? Or what if they couldn't get the tenant out? Or we have to adjust this. Anytime you make a change to the 1A, it's no different than a purchase and sale agreement. It requires an initial by both parties, by you and by them. It can be done here on the 1A, or it can be done with an amendment to the contract, which would be Form 18. But nonetheless, in order for this to be a valid contract in the state, it needs to be filled in. We had an agent who lost a listing agreement because they did not fill this part in. And another agent from John L. Scott went in after the appointment and said, oh, hey, show me what you signed. I'm doing the appointment. Show me what you signed. The seller showed this John L. Scott agent what they had signed, and our broker did not fill in that section number 19. I got a phone call from the designated broker over at John L. Scott saying, sorry, you guys don't have a valid listing. Your agent did not fill in that section number 19. So even if you're not quite sure, like it's a moving target, fill something in. You can fill it in up to 29 days. If you read that section, it says the date shall not be more than 30 days. So that's from the effective date of the agreement. So if we sign the listing agreement tonight, I could not go live. The latest I could go live would be 29 days. It has to be no more than 30 days from today's date. Okay, so that's kind of, if you're looking for what do I put, it's always easier to go earlier than it is to go late. So kind of think about that when you're filling this in. Nobody's complained about going earlier. Everybody's kind of behind the ball at getting things going. So go ahead and fill that in. And if you need to adjust it later, it'll be easier to move it up than it is to say, oh, we have to go later. And then we can adjust accordingly. So it just needs to be filled in on number 19. If you could highlight that section 22, Shannon, 22 through 24, line 22 through 24. Yeah, that section, there are many people that are violating this right now, and there are fines still going out to the brokerage firms. Luckily, knock on wood, I have not received a complaint on this recently. But all it takes is one person to be unhappy that you got the listing over them, and now we're looking at a violation. The smallest violation at the MLS for pre-marketing, coming soon, those types of things, is $3,500. That's the smallest fine I've ever seen the MLS assess. So in order to avoid that from happening, things you want to keep in mind is I don't want to see you posting on Facebook. I know you guys are doing a great job and getting out there, but I don't want to see a coming soon. I mean, some of you guys are getting close to crossing the line. Luckily, we have not had any complaints, but be very careful. It only takes one agent to complain about how you're pre-marketing, and now we're violating that section on line 22 through 24 that says the firm or the seller shall not promote or advertise the property in any manner whatsoever, including but not limited to yard signs. So if you put a coming soon sign up, no go, not in Washington. If you come from a different state, no go, can't do that here.
Well, even signs themselves, right, Rochelle? You shouldn't have the
Correct.
sign out. The
You
post can be out,
You can
but the
put the
sign
post
can't.
up, yeah, but the panel needs to be tucked away or not on the, just make sure the panel is not hung. If the panel happens to be on the side of the house or on the front porch, I mean, you're not in violation because you're not marketing it in that way. But just be careful that your sign company does not install the sign with the panel until that date on October 15th, 2020. If we have to adjust, then we need to get their initial. So what if we decide to go early? We're going to go early on this and we wanted to get that pre-marketing done. We just need to change the listing date and then we're compliant. But again, if you are flagged or you have not gone on the market and they check the 1A and it says October 31st, and yet you're putting a sign up and getting people to call on your listing ahead of going live on the MLS, that's a violation, and it's a significant fine for that. So be very careful on that. And again, if it's your own property, it doesn't matter. You still have signed that listing agreement and you agree to abide by the rules and conduct that we all subscribe to at the Northwest MLS.
So Cheryl had a quick question is, what do you mean by the panel? What we mean, Cheryl, is the actual sign itself.
Right.
It has for sale by Cheryl Borg with your phone number. It has Best Choice Realty on it. That's what we mean by that. The post itself, the yard arm, that can be out, but the panel, the actual sign itself is what we're referring to.
Okay, I thought that's what you meant, but I never called it a panel. So now I know. Okay, thanks.
Yep, no worries.
Okay, and then the commission, you guys got to understand that the commission is the total commission. So in line 29, it says total commission. So that goes on that line. So if somebody asked me, in fact, my mother-in-law, of course she did. My mother-in-law she is the biggest looky-loo. She's always thinking about real estate deals. She should have got a real estate license back in the 70s, but she did not. But she asked me, what is if I was to list my house today, what could my expectation be? And again, she lives in Federal Way. What would the expectation be for commission? And I told her it's 5% right now. So she would expect to see on the total commission 5 in that line 29, and then 2.5 on that co-broke for where she's located. Now, not all, in certain areas of the service areas we cover, it might be 6 and 3, but that's the way you would write it. So just so you guys are clear, that's how you negotiate it. Never go on a listing appointment. This is another tip for newbies. Never go on a listing appointment and not fill this in. It needs to be filled in. Again, to have a valid listing agreement, it needs to be filled in, and to honor the commission rate that they have agreed to pay you. If it's not filled out correctly, Jerry K catches a lot of you. One of the most common ones that we catch is, hey, it's a family deal. I'm not making very much off of it. I'm doing a flat rate. You still have to fill out a 1A, and you just need to fill it out appropriately. So again, it's the total commission. Let's use an example that we're doing. Just take that 2.5 off, Sharon, put 2.5 on that right there, and then put plus $2,000. Let's just do that. So that would be how you'd write it if you're just basically doing a flat fee on the listing and you're giving the broker that's bringing the buyer 2.5%. That is how you would write that. Or again, you go back to the way that's common, but that's a lot of people mess up on that section. They're like, I want to give my client a deal. How do I do that? That's how you would write that.
Yeah, it's not proper to have 2.5 on the top line and 2.5 on the bottom. Yeah, I mean, some agents, they've been in situations where it's like, well, the way that it's written, you're not getting paid at all.
Yeah.
So,
and it's kind of embarrassing when you have to go back to the seller and say, hey, I made a little boo-boo. My broker caught it. Can you, initial this place? It's a lot harder to fix that than to do it right here. So make sure that's done properly. if you scroll down, the other things that the seller is agreeing to, and I don't read through this entire thing, the important things to kind of remind your seller about is obviously commission. They go right to that, and the term, and then that we put a key box on. And if there are issues with not putting a key box or signage, we may need to do an amendment and make sure that everybody is clear with that. There should not be cross-offs on this 1A. It's been very rare that I have to help you and adjust any part of this 1A agreement. This is the 1A that works for commercial land for all of the property types. And it's very rarely that we're going to cross off anything that's listed here. It just needs to be filled out correctly. And it's only 2 pages. So go to the next page and let's make sure this should be a reminder to you. If you go down to page 2, they still have this checkbox, and this should, you kind of wonder, why am I checking this box? Are the underside the sole owners? Instead of it saying, are the underside the sole owners, in your mind tonight after you've taken my class, you're going to say, did I open up preliminary title and check to make sure the vesting is the people that I have signing this listing agreement? And when I check the box, yes, that means I have verified to make sure that the people I'm working with are the correct people that should be signing down below. So kind of, I wish they reword that, but in your mind, you just make that adjustment and always check the box yes. Okay, you sign it, they sign it, you have a valid listing agreement as long as there's a legal description attached. So do I do this in person more than I do it with Transaction Desk? The answer is yes, but I'm going to have it all printed.
And it looks like Carl just had a question where it says, if the list date goes past 30 days from signing the 1A, do we need to fill out a new 1A? And the answer to that would be yes. I mean, we've got a new agreement that we need to talk about in terms of terms.
And then we'll just go ahead and wrap up. So we're done with time. The only thing I'm going to show you before we get off, so that this shows up in the recording, is how to fill out the input. There is a quick shortcut. So since you go ahead and go to the transaction forms. So as you're going through and you're filling out your input sheets, again, you can send your input sheets directly to the MLS for your fee. You guys all pay dues with the MLS. One of the things that they do is they will take this input sheet from you and actually input it into the MLS, and they will not charge you a dime to do that. You would send it to listinginput@nwmls.com. So if you fill this out and you're like, I don't have the time, or I'm just like too stressed to be able to do this, you can send it right directly to them and they will do it for you. They have a team of people that have experience in doing this. However, when you look at this input sheet, you have to have it all filled out correctly, and we need that as well. So all of the bullet points, look at next to county, city. Shanna, if you could just highlight that. County, city, all of that. That has all of the bullets is mandatory fields that have to be filled out. So go ahead and put in a community district and the area so I can show you. There is a minimum you have to do. Just pick anything. Yep, there you go. And then put that one in Puyallup. Perfect. And then put in the address. Just make it up for now. And then the street name. There's a minimum amount you need just to get it to a point where then you can work on the file. But if you want the MLS to do it for you, you have to have this input sheet all filled out correctly, and everything that has a bubble or a black dot next to it needs to be filled out, needs to be filled in. If you make a mistake, they will just email you back and say, hey, it just doesn't not taking, or it's not filled out correctly. And then you kind of get back and forth and it takes a long time. So if you're like, I just want to do it myself, then you would just click on the upper right-hand corner in Transaction Desk. There's a little button that says Upload Listing. When you click that, it will get you into Matrix, and then you can start to data entry it. Go ahead and do that. So it takes a minute, and it will just basically, and again, I'm teaching you, you should have all the bullets filled out. Otherwise, you're going to get to the next slide and you're not having, oh, there we go. Now I've got it into a matrix, and I can go in here and I can go to input and I can select the incomplete one. Go ahead and do that. And then I can go in and data entry it from this point. And this is what's familiar to some of you. This is what gets published on all the MLS and all of the websites. So it's got to be done correctly. If you are opting not to do the input sheets and send it to the listing input or do it yourself and get your sellers to initial them, then you better have get this all filled out and have sent this to your client so that they can review it prior to you going live on the market. It's a lot harder to change something if you messed up on the price, if you messed up on the square footage, if you messed up on which appliances are included, and the seller gets really unhappy because they find out that Zillow or Trulia or Redfin has improperly marketed their property. All of a sudden you don't look so good. So make sure that you have at least, you've got two paths when you get to this point. You can either do it yourself by uploading listing and filling this all out, or you can send it to the MLS all filled out and they'll do it for you. You'll need to also send them a copy of your photos and they will also upload your photos as well. So that might be a huge time saver for those of you who are just like, I just want to be out there selling properties. I don't want to be sitting behind the desk doing this. Listing input at NWMLS.com. Just make sure you send them all of they'll need the legal description, they'll need the commission amounts, they'll need all of the information filled out on the 1A and on the 1. Any other questions? I think we got it.
Well, one of the things that I know that we get a lot of questions about, and when it comes to actually reviewing transaction, is what about this listing input sheets? Why do I need to get listing input sheets? The MLS changed one of their rules saying that we need to be getting listing input sheets initialed, and the firm needs to have a copy of that. And the reason they do is there's not very many other forms that are on there's actually really only one form on the MLS that indicates price, really. So where would you be able to determine with the seller what price to list their house at? Unless you have the listing input sheets initialed with all of the terms filled out on the Form 1, or if you sent them a listing before going active on the market and getting their approval to go active, there's not really any other way to get their approval on price or the rest of the items on the listing input sheet.
Good point. Anything else? Okay, the button you clicked is upload a listing. It's really tucked in the upper right hand corner. It's upload listing, and it's like a box with some paper stuffed in it. That's what you're
Thank
looking
you.
for. Yeah.
I saw it now.
Yeah, perfect. And then I think we have, again, you could have this signed. The transaction coordinators, if you are using a transaction coordinator, they do this for you and they get it signed by your client. So you don't even have to do that step if you're using a transaction coordinator. Many of you ask me, if I'm using a transaction coordinator, do they do this? Yes, they do. And that might be a reason you may want to consider using a transaction coordinator, is to help you with this part. If you're kind of still, gosh, this is taking forever. Well, they'll need some of this same things that we went over today. They'll need the property profile and the legal description and some of the basics of the price and what you want to offer out there. So, you still have to do some of the work, but a transaction coordinator can assist you if you want to pay somebody to do that for you. I think that was all the questions. If not, we'll go ahead and let you guys go. Hopefully this was helpful. If there's other questions that you need addressed, just send me an email. I apologize, my computer died for the night. It got tired, but we'll talk to you next Monday and have a great week.